The Giza Plateau usually hums with the chaotic energy of tourism, but deep within the limestone skeleton of the Great Pyramid, the atmosphere is one of heavy, silent stasis. For the first time in nearly 20 years, a specialized team of investigators has been granted access to the inner sanctum of the ancient world's last standing wonder. Their mission is not merely to admire the architecture of the Fourth Dynasty, but to investigate a seismic shift in Egyptology. The scientific confirmation of a massive, hidden chamber concealed within the pyramid's core. The ascent into the structure is claustrophobic and steep. To reach the heart of the pyramid, one must traverse the ascending passage, a narrow, suffocating corridor that eventually opens up into one of the most breathtaking feats of ancient engineering, the Grand Gallery. The architecture of impossible precision. Standing at the base of the Grand Gallery, the sheer scale of the interior defies the primitive tools attributed to the builders of 4,500 years ago. It is a cathedral of stone, buried beneath millions of tons of masonry. The gallery soars upward, a corbelled vault, rising approximately 28 feet, 8.5 meters, from the floor to the ceiling, stretching nearly 157 feet, 48 meters, into the darkness above. It is here that the conventional narrative begins to fracture. The construction is flawless. Huge blocks of stone are fitted together with such extreme precision that there is no mortar binding them. The joints are so tight that a razor blade or a banknote cannot be inserted between the seams. This is not merely construction, it is a hermetic seal. However, the team notes a distinct geological anomaly regarding the materials used. While the exterior and the bulk of the pyramid's mass are composed of local limestone, the inner chambers, the Grand Gallery, and the King's Chamber above it are constructed from a different material entirely: red granite. This is not a local stone. This specific granite, rich in quartz crystal, was quarried in Aswan. The logistics of this transport are staggering. Aswan lies roughly 600 miles, over 960 kilometers, south of Giza. In an age before the wheel was utilized for heavy transport, the builders moved stones weighing up to 80 tons across a continent, floating them down the Nile and dragging them up onto the plateau. The question that hangs in the heavy air of the gallery is, why? Why go to such impossible lengths for a specific type of rock if limestone was readily available? The answer, according to alternative theorists, lies not in the stone's durability, but in its conductivity, the void in the dark. As the team stands in the Grand Gallery, their attention turns to the ceiling. Directly above their heads, shielded by meters of solid masonry, lies the Big Void. This discovery was brought to light by the Scan Pyramids Project, an international mission utilizing muon radiography, a technique that uses cosmic ray byproducts to map the density of stone structures. The scans revealed a cavernous space, at least 100 feet long, mirroring the Grand Gallery, but situated directly above it. It is sealed, inaccessible, and utterly mysterious. The existence of this fourth chamber disrupts the established archaeological model. For centuries, the academic consensus has held that pyramids were essentially burial vaults, simple tombs designed to house the pharaoh's ka, spirit, and his physical mummy. The standard model dictates a layout of 3 chambers: the subterranean, the queen's, and the king's. A fourth, massive chamber has no place in the tomb theory. This physical anomaly compounds a long-standing historical problem: the absence of the dead. The missing pharaohs, archaeologists and Egyptologists have long maintained that the Great Pyramid was the final resting place of the pharaoh Khufu. Yet this claim faces a glaring contradiction. No Egyptian pharaoh has ever been found inside a pyramid in Egypt. The mummies of the great kings, Ramesses, Seti, Tutankhamun, were all discovered in the Valley of the Kings, located in Luxor, hundreds of miles away from the Giza complex. When the Great Pyramid was first breached by Caliph al-Ma'mun in the 9th century and later explored by 18th and 19th century archaeologists, it was empty. There was no mummy, there were no grave goods, no gold, no statues, and perhaps most disturbingly, no writing. This silence is deafening. In almost every other tomb in Egypt, the walls are a canvas of horror vacui, filled with spells, incantations, and the Book of the Dead, intended to guide the soul into the afterlife. The walls boast of the king's achievements and his lineage. Yet, inside the most magnificent structure of them all, there is complete anonymity. The walls of the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber are bare. There is not a single chisel mark of a hieroglyph. If the structure was not a tomb, what was it? If the Grand Gallery was not a ceremonial hallway for a funeral procession, what was its function? The machine hypothesis. As the tomb theory fails to account for the physical evidence, the lack of a body, the lack of writing, the specific use of conductive granite, a different hypothesis has gained traction, championed by researchers and mechanical engineers. The leading voice in this field is researcher Christopher Dunn, who proposes that the Great Pyramid of Giza was never a tomb at all. He argues that the structure functioned as a geomechanical power plant, a machine built on a massive scale, designed to harness the Earth's natural energies. Dunn's theory shifts the perspective from ritual to function. He suggests that the pyramid was a coupled oscillator, a device attached to the Earth and tuned to resonate with the planet's vibrational frequency. The mechanics of the power plant. The Giza power plant theory is not merely a vague concept. It is a detailed breakdown of the pyramid's internal systems, interpreting the shafts, chambers, and passageways as components of a functioning engine. 1. The intake, the Nile water pump. The process begins deep underground. Historical records and physical evidence suggest that a well shaft once existed at the pyramid's entrance. In ancient times, the Nile River flowed much closer to the plateau than it does today. Dunn theorizes that water was diverted from the Nile into the subterranean chamber beneath the pyramid. This chamber was not an unfinished tomb, but a hydraulic pump. The rushing water would create a water hammer effect, generating a rhythmic, seismic pulse. This vibration would travel up through the limestone body of the pyramid. 2. The resonator, the Grand Gallery. This is where the red granite becomes crucial. Granite contains high concentrations of quartz crystal. Quartz is piezoelectric, meaning that when it is subjected to mechanical stress or vibration, it generates an electrical charge. As the pulse from the subterranean chamber vibrated through the pyramid, the granite beams in the upper chambers would begin to resonate. The Grand Gallery, with its stepped, corbelled walls, is theorized to have acted as an acoustic resonator, possibly housing banks of Helmholtz resonators to amplify the sound into a focused beam of acoustic energy. 3. The reaction chamber, the Queen's Chamber. The central chemical reaction, according to the theory, took place in the so-called Queen's Chamber. For years, archaeologists were baffled by the two narrow shafts leading into this room. Unlike the shafts in the King's Chamber, these do not exit the pyramid. They stop abruptly within the masonry. Dunn proposes these were not air shafts for a dead spirit, but fluid conduits. He suggests that two specific chemicals were introduced into the chamber through these tubes: hydrated zinc and dilute hydrochloric acid. When hydrated zinc and hydrochloric acid are mixed, they undergo a violent chemical reaction. The byproduct of this reaction is hydrogen gas. 4. The evidence in the shafts. This aspect of the theory moved from pure speculation to potential probability with the use of robotic exploration. When the German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a rover up the southern shaft of the Queen's Chamber in 1993, and subsequent explorations followed, anomalies were found on the walls. Traces of chemical residue were discovered inside these shafts, specifically remnants consistent with zinc and acidic compounds. This physical evidence aligns disturbingly well with the chemical inputs required for Dunn's proposed hydrogen generator. 5. The output: microwave amplification. The final stage of the theory postulates that the hydrogen gas produced in the Queen's Chamber filled the interior spaces, including the King's Chamber. The acoustic energy, sound, vibrating the granite, caused the quartz to release electrons, piezoelectricity. According to Dunn, the pyramid essentially functioned as a mesa, microwave amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, a non-optical laser. The hydrogen gas absorbed the energy and emitted it as a coherent beam of electromagnetic energy, shot out through the southern shaft of the King's Chamber, which points directly to the constellation Orion. A lost technology. If the Great Pyramid was indeed a power plant, the implications are staggering. It suggests that pre-dynastic Egypt, or a civilization that predates the known pharaohs, possessed a grasp of physics, chemistry, and engineering that rivals or exceeds our own. Dunn suggests this energy could have been used for a variety of purposes, from stabilizing the local tectonic plates to powering ancient machinery. We can come up with all kinds of devices to power with that kind of energy, Dunn notes, from simple domestic appliances to highly advanced spacecraft. The April 2018 visit to the Grand Gallery highlighted the stark contrast between the two prevailing worldviews. On one side, the mainstream academic view of a silent, empty tomb built by a civilization obsessed with death. On the other, the view of the pyramid as a humming, vibrating machine built by a civilization obsessed with life and energy. As the team stood beneath the weight of the massive stones, looking up toward the concealed void, the silence of the pyramid seemed less like the quiet of a grave and more like the silence of an engine that has simply been turned off, waiting for the key to turn once more.